Today, my speech is about how technology has influenced communication. Historically, technology has influenced communication in a way that many would argue is a net positive. In terms of technology, Merriam-Webster defines technology as the practical application of knowledge. And that's a very broad definition, but when you're talking about communication, you consider that practical application of any knowledge could include things like written speech or clay tablets, radio, really any method of communicating like propaganda, getting one message to multiple people or one person throughout time. And technology has advanced with human civilization. In fact, it's one of the hallmarks of a complex civilization. Sumerians in about 3000 BCE established a form of communication technology called cuneiform, which is writing on clay tablets with wedge-shaped styli. Now, by itself, it doesn't seem like a very significant technological leap, but when you consider the fact that Sumerians were one of the earliest civilizations to establish communication to people from long distances, advanced trade routes, laws and governments, and differentiation of labor. Well, in Gardner's Art Through the Ages, Western Perspective, Volume 1, Kleiner states that labor differentiation is one of the earliest hallmarks of an advanced civilization. Labor differentiation allowed things such as art and technology to have an explosive development. Societies all throughout the Middle East spread along with trade, and so too did technological advancements, allowing greater communication and the spread of the human civilization throughout the Mediterranean. And obviously in time, that also resulted in mass communication and public communication, and that evolved with the human needs for communication as technology required, as communication required technology that could meet the needs of very dense societies all at once. Now, unfortunately, with advancing technology and greater demands for communication, there's some pretty significant trade-offs. More people, to communicate to more people, there's a delay in feedback, and there's also a reduced response. You have to increase your preparation because there's also a greater risk if you don't prepare your message correctly. It's poorly received, you don't get feedback as quickly, and it causes greater damage that takes longer to control. So with bigger messages and more people, the greater the risk and the more advanced the technology is required to deliver that message. There are different types of communication. The one that most people are familiar with is dyadic communication, which is one-on-one, or small group communication, and that's great. And it's been good for most of history because the feedback is almost instantaneous. There's little to no preparation time. You can correct mistakes in the moment with minimal risk. And then the next one is public communication. So anywhere between a handful of people to 9 to 12 people who can communicate with each other, share feedback, exchange ideas. You might have some emotional response, and it might take a little bit longer to correct mistakes, and you probably need more preparation, but the risk still isn't as big as it could be. Now, mass communication, which is what most people are familiar with now in the modern age, you have to prepare your message very carefully because you get little to no feedback. And if you prepare the message and don't consider the implications when you disseminate the information, there's very little feedback that you get from the people who disagree with or find the message problematic. And once you do get that information, it takes much longer to go out and correct that. So it takes a lot more preparation. There's much greater risk. But unfortunately, with modern communication, that's what we see the most of in today's world. Now, in modern times, previously, lapses in communication because we weren't exposed to constant communication from advertisements and text messages and emails and TV and radio and so on and so forth. We wouldn't be able to see each other maybe for days or weeks at a time. We wouldn't be able to communicate except through emails, well, snail mail, written letters, postcards, telegraphs. And so whenever you did meet people, it was a big deal. And you had to have quality, thorough communication. And that kind of communication met several needs. So according to Dr. William Schutz in Human Communications from Pearson, Hunter, Nelson et al., human needs in communication include inclusion, affection, and control. Affection can be perceived from the kinds of messages that you receive or send, personal touches, evident consideration. So if you send someone a postcard or an invitation or a thank you letter, or you send them a communication that addresses a recent grievance or loss, these kinds of personal touches can be considered affectionate, and they meet an emotional need that we all have. Control is achieved through when we receive the message, if we choose to engage the message, what the message is, what we send out, and the feedback opportunities that we have to influence change through messages. Now, inclusion can be overwhelming but necessary, especially in the modern world, because when you're included, you get to influence change. When you're included, you get to know when there's change. You get to learn that you have a job, that you have a schedule. You get to learn if those plans change. You get to meet up with friends. You get to learn about your family schedule. Inclusion is very important, but when we have constant bombardment from society and different messages, it can be very overwhelming, and choosing to abstain from those kinds of communications can cause anxiety from the fear of missing out. So modern communications erode boundaries and create burnout because humans are forced to prioritize. They're unable to eliminate much. Availability is necessary to make a living, and media oversaturation is causing diminishing returns and is toxic. And needs are seldom met, so the risk to health, especially psychological health, is really high. So in conclusion, technology is good, communication is great, but modern oversaturation is harming society's ability to cope in a healthy way.